Science Uncut, presented by the Volkswagen Foundation.
Every day, with whatever we do online, we give away some information. We create data. Be it the history of our web browser, the book order we place, or posting our vacation pictures. Who owns these data? Who is allowed to control them? Those are urgent legal questions, but do we really have good answers to them? In his talk, Nikolaus Forgó explains how privacy and data protection are high up in the list of priorities of the European Union, and yet we still have difficulties to even define the basic concepts involved. At first sight, the legal situation might look simple when it comes to data protection law. Actually, it can be summed up in only 20 seconds, Forgó says. Processing of personal data is illegal, with only two exceptions. There's either an explicit permission written into the law, or the data subject has given informed consent. But this only seems simple. It is not even clear what we mean by personal data. Is an IP address personal data? The European Court is considering this question at the moment, but no one knows the answer, says Nikolaus Forgó. When clicking the Agree button on a website, how many people have really read the terms and conditions they agree to? Are they even written for those who have to agree, or are they meant for lawyers in order to signal that other lawyers are involved? Nikolaus Forgó is professor for IT law and legal computer sciences at the Institute for Legal Informatics at the University of Hannover. His research areas include data protection law, intellectual property rights, and legal aspects of electronic commerce. He gave his talk on March 27, 2015, at the Herrenhausen conference, Big Data in a Transdisciplinary Perspective. The conference was organized by the Volkswagen Foundation.
I have to make an announcement at the very beginning. I'm very sorry, the title is wrong. The correct title should be 5 Tips to Young Colleagues on How to Survive Presentations Such as this one. I was very inspired by all those lightning talks, and I think this is an appropriate message to deliver today, how to survive something like this here. And there are 5 rules, as I said. The rule 1 I would call never ever speak after Thomas Hearn, because you can only lose. And unfortunately, I failed in this, so I missed already that first requirement. Then there is a second rule, which is probably before starting to agree on a topic, which I did. It's a good idea to think about the topic before agreeing on this. So I should have thought about this topic, but unfortunately I failed again, because I will not speak about this, as I said. I will not speak about ignore the facts, forget the law and some European principles in an era of big data. Instead of this, I will speak about me, which is, of course, more interesting for me, not necessarily for you, but let's start to talk about me. So this is me. This is what I see when I do a Google search on me. And this is just a part of me. Something which is possibly also me is this little device that I'm wearing here, by the way, for a research project, so I have an excuse for this. And that's a Fitbit gadget that I wear, which produces information like this one here. This is me the day before yesterday, so that was the first conference day. And as you quite clearly see, I was at the conference. I was not really active in the afternoon, but I did some activity in the morning, and I needed to run after the conference because I had so much input received here. So this is probably me. And this is also me. This is my day yesterday. These are my movements, how they were tracked by Google. You can see the place where we are here in the upper right part of the screen. And if you go a little bit, if you screen in a little bit more here, you see what I did in the morning, because this is my flat here in Hannover. And you can see that I used to use my phone at the toilet. So that is one of the information that you receive here. That's also me. And in a way, this is probably also me. This is a Google search engine not too many of you might be familiar with. That is the archive of the news group. So I'm sorry that I need to tell those to those people who were not born then yet. There was something different than just the web long time ago. And one of those phenomenons were news groups. And if you Google, and if you use that service from Google, you find postings from me from 1998. So quite long time ago. But let's come back to this. So this is me on Google today. And if you look a little bit more on this, you see not only Ulpian, who is a Roman lawyer I'm very proud of, to be on the same page as he is, but you also see Thomas Hearn when you are looking for me. So probably we should not speak about me, we should speak about Thomas here. So let's speak about Thomas. Never, I said, rule one is never ever speak after Thomas Hearn. So then it's probably better to speak about Thomas Hearn instead. This is what I will do. So this is Thomas. This is Thomas. This is a YouTube video about and from Thomas Hearn from 2006, which has 18,410 hits yesterday. And probably it's also better to let Thomas speak here instead of myself, because that would be more interesting. I should hear sound here now. I don't know why I don't hear the sound. So this is Thomas speaking about YouTube about 8 years ago, which is also interesting. This is Thomas. And there are plenty of other pictures I will not show, because I want to speak about me. Me and Thomas. About my hourly activity on Google, about the fact that I tend to work on Sundays, or at least I use Google searches on Sunday, and about every single day of my whole life, there are entries on Google such as this one here, for example, that on the 31st of January 2014, at 4 o'clock in the morning, why doesn't he sleep then? At 4 o'clock in the morning, he was searching for Pink Floyd. So why this on that day? And information like this one is available on every day, every minute, everywhere, on Thomas possibly and me. And just one further example on this perhaps. This is an excerpt of my search history from one single month. This is March 2013. And what you see here is every single entry stands for one search that I did. You have an ID at the very left side of the screen. And all this is what I'm looking for. And this exists, as I said, for every day, for every minute, every second I do this. 3,000 searches a month at the moment is my average that I do. From different devices at different locations all over the day, all day. Speaking about me is interesting, of course, but speaking about Thomas is more interesting, and even more interesting perhaps it could be to speak about you. Of course, it's not just me, and it's not just me having different devices. There are about 72 million Germans at the moment who use the internet on a regular basis. And there are, of course, billions of data sets that I was mentioning here already available. But let's come back to the topic. The topic, as I said, is how should I survive such a presentation? And there's a third rule, which is make confessions. People like confessions. So I need to make a confession here in order to get your attention back. So let me make a confession. The confession is I was born in 1968, which means that when I hear a term like PRISM, the thing that I see in my head looks like this. This is an LP cover. You know, the younger ones don't really know that any longer, this huge black thing, right? So this is an LP cover from a band which is called Pink Floyd, and this LP is called The Dark Side of the Moon. And it brings me, in a way, to my youth and to the early stages of what I want to mention in this talk. It brings me in the early 80s. Because when I was 14 or so when I was starting to understand a little bit of the world, that was the moment when the PC entered the global arena. And I would like to take the younger people in the room a little bit back into this part of history by showing you a very short little film. So I will need sound again on this. I hope that this works now. Yes, it does. So this is in a way the motto of the second part of this presentation. 1984 won't be like 1984. What you saw here was a film, a very short film that was shown only twice on US TV screens during the Super Bowl, and it was in 1983, in late 1983, and it announced the Macintosh, so the first really mass market device that Apple sold, and this is how it looked like. Okay, so this is the technology that was advertised by this film in 1983, so in my early youth. And it's a funny coincidence that that film was shown in 1983, because 1983 is exactly the year when, in Germany at least, a lot of data protection debate started. Because in 1983 was the climax of the debate of the public census in Germany. It's funny that so many big data issues have to do with public census. Because that was the moment when the German Constitutional Court in 1983 found or innovated this so-called right to self-determination, which is in a way the starting point for a lot of data protection debate in Europe. And since then, since 1983, one can say that this idea has made a remarkable career all over in Europe, and that we are very serious on this now in Europe, in particular because we find this in our constitution in a way, in the Charter on Fundamental Rights of the European Union. So this is the Charter, and it starts in Article 1, which is about human dignity. And not very far away from this Article 1, we have two articles, Article 7 and Article 8, both of them dealing in a way with privacy or with data protection. Two articles very much at the beginning of this document. And I will, for time reasons, not be able to go through every detail here. So, for example, what everyone might mean here. This is an important message to deliver to US citizens. Everyone in Europe means everyone, and not only US citizens, for example. I will not go into any detail here. I will skip the issue for the moment, what personal data means. I will skip the question what fair means, what purpose relation means. Oh, Thomas mentioned this already. I will skip what informed consent might mean here for the moment, and I will skip all those user rights issues. And I will also not go into any detail about this very weird idea. I completely agree with Thomas here. One of the few areas we probably completely agree in this talk. About this very weird idea about independent authorities. This is, as I said, in the Constitution, right? So this is really very weird to have something like this in a Charter of Fundamental Rights. I will skip all this, and I just want you to understand that data protection can be taught in 20 years, and it can also be taught in 20 seconds, because this is the outcome of this 1983 settlement, and data protection in law in 20 seconds goes like this. It's very easy. Processing of personal data is illegal. Please repeat. Processing of personal data is illegal. And there are just two exceptions. First one is either there is an explicit permission written in the law, or the data subject has given informed consent. And this comes, as I said, from this early 80s, and since then has made its career all over in Europe. Today, when I speak to my daughter and I mention PRISM to her, she no longer sees Pink Floyd, but she sees things like this one here, Katy Perry. And she, of course, doesn't live any longer in a world consisting of Macintosh and public censuses looking like this, but she lives in a world where computers are everywhere, and we have all those trends you all are very much familiar with, which can be probably summarized in a way that more and more of these services are free, and the price you pay for this is that you more and more lose control about what's going to happen with your data. Very simply saying, if the product is for free, you are the product. So where's the problem? The problem, point one, is 1984 won't be like 1984 is certainly true. But also, 2015 won't be like 1965. So why am I mentioning 1965 here? Because just as Thomas said, this is not only a privacy issue that we are talking about, but it's also and constantly a copyright issue. And the German copyright code is even older than the German data protection ideas. This comes from 1965 and probably is quite similar to what we have to see when it comes to data protection. It's a failure. It fails for several reasons. I could speak about this for another half an hour, but I think the status quo is we have issues everywhere, not only in data protection, but also in copyright. One can put this very shortly like an American colleague did in the Stanford Law Review, which says Europeans have a long tradition of declaring abstract privacy or copyrights in theory that they fail to enforce in practice. So true. So the question then is, who owns my data that I'm talking about here? And the answer is not to be found in this code from 1965, because the paradigm of this piece of legislation looks like this. This is The Poet by Karl Spitzweg, who has invested a lot of time and money and love in order to produce a piece of work. And the term here is work and authorship. So what the German Copyright Act says in its Article 1 is that you need to be an author to be protected, and an author is somebody who produces an intellectual creation. So two terms, author, intellectual creation, and both terms probably do not really fit well when I speak about my data, my information, what I'm delivering to you at the moment. And my hypothesis now, Thomas, I take the ball, my hypothesis now is that the reason for this is that there is a misconception in the German civil code about what property means, because the German civil code, very different from the Austrian civil code, sorry to say this, so it's not only 100 years older, but it's also different in this. The German civil code relates property to an object, to a thing, something which is a physical good. It says so in Article 903, and it defines the physical good in Section 90, which says only corporal objects are things as defined by the law. And from there, it's a long story. To make a long story short, it's getting more and more complex to build this concept of objects into a world of copyright. And therefore, my suggestion would be to delete that term of ownership and to start thinking about controllership. So the question then should not be who owns my data. The question should be who controls my data. And the first question to answer then, of course, is what is my data? Google, for example, even started to announce websites like this one. This is not a communist manifesto. This is a trademark of Google, and the website that was announced by this is called Data Liberation Front. Yeah? So very, very fundamental in a way. So what is that needs to be liberated by this manifesto? Is this my data? This is how my LinkedIn website looked yesterday. Is this my data, which is my list of cookies that were set on my machine in less than 2 weeks. So this is 2 weeks of surfing the internet without caring about cookies. Is this my data? Is this my, or the person mentioned in the stories, data? This is the guy who fought for the right to be forgotten in Europe. So he wanted to be deleted from the Google search entries. And the outcome of this is now that everybody knows who he is, of course, right? So he will go into legal history as the person who fought for the right to be forgotten, and he will never be forgotten for that, rightly. Is this his data? Who should be in control of this? If you look on the website like the Daily Telegraph, they have a very nice screen there, which is about all of those here are news stories published by the Daily Telegraph that you no longer find on Google because of the right to be forgotten. So somebody wanted the search entry to be deleted. Whose data is deleted there? And it's not just the Daily Telegraph, it's 260,000 links that were deleted for this very purpose since the European Court of Justice has issued that decision last year. And it's not, of course, it's not only about controllership or ownership of data, it's also about the issue that was already mentioned by Thomas. What does the term personal mean here? So what is personal data? And the answer, to make it very short, is nobody knows. Okay, I could give on this another lecture for 60 minutes at least, and the answer is every single question, what personal data means, is unanswered. And the outcome of this looks like this. This is a very nice city in Germany. I've never been there, but it must be interesting. And this is how it looks on Google Street View. You see that you don't see anything. And the reason for this is that all the people who were living behind those blurred parts of the picture argued that their house is part of their personal data and therefore needs to be deleted, or blurred at least. We have a similar case at the German Federal Court at the moment. The question here is an IP address personal data, question mark. In 2015, I need to repeat this. In 2015, we still debate on the question, and not just academics like Thomas and me, but the Federal Court and the European Court of Justice debate on the question whether an IP address is personal. And if it's personal, remember Rule 1, which is, if it's personal, processing is illegal. Please repeat, if it's personal, processing is illegal. So who controls then my personal data? And the answer probably is, first place, me. I control my personal data. And that goes back to the Romans, because there's a very old principle which is volenti non fit in iuria. If I agree, then nothing wrong happens with my data. And this is probably the reason why this concept of informed consent is still so dominant in Europe. And if you look at this then, you'll find websites like this one here. This is a very nice website, patientslikeme.com, which is a sharing community about diseases that you might be affected of. Like this person here, Edward, who is affected by bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, all other kinds of mental diseases, and who is present on this website using a pseudonym up here and the picture, and then telling all the story about what he has. And he has agreed on this. You can also do this with your genetic data. And you can do this, as I said, on platforms like Patients Like Me, because you have agreed on this. There are long terms and conditions here, nobody reads. And they are rather clear on this, saying that members should expect that every piece of information they submit may be shared with the community, other patients, and partners. The interesting part, of course, is partners. Partners is advertisers or insurances or whoever. And everybody who participates in Patients Like Me, at least in theory, could read this, and could also read that those data are shared, as I said, with partners. And it's not only Patients Like Me, same story for Fitbit, same story for any other health-related big data service out there. All of them work in the same way. Somebody needs to give informed consent. And the issue with informed consent now looks like this. That was a website that was published on the 1st of April 2010 by a major online gaming company. And what they did on the 1st April of 2010 was that they changed their terms and conditions by saying that if you give an order on that day, you agree to grant us a non-transferable option to claim for now and forever for your immortal soul. So you sold your soul. And there was another term in the conditions which said, if you do not agree, please write us an email. You get a voucher for this online game worth $10. And the outcome of this was 7,500 sold souls on one day, less than 10 vouchers. So this is probably the issue when it comes to informed consent. Informed consent is, I would say, challenged, and there is a reason for this, which is already in this saying from Jean-Paul Ligeti very well put at, which is contracts and terms and conditions are made not for you and me, they are made for lawyers, so that laymen see that lawyers are needed. This is the business model. Websites like this one, I like this, make fun of this. So if you go to dailymash.co.uk, what you'll read there is we have updated our privacy policy. Know that not that you care. You can read it or click to get rid of this annoying box and carry on as before, whatever you do, okay? So this is probably the best summary I can find on this. And the question then, of course, would be, does the consumer or does the data subject need to be protected from his own given consent? And that would be a question that I would like to ask in a later stage of the debate. But at the moment, I will come back to who controls my personal information, who controls me in this scenario. And the answer is not easy because there are so different values at stake. There is a value that I would call autonomy. There are values like the data controller's interest. And in every single data protection and copyright rule that you might find, you will find those conflicts of values. And it's no wonder that the European legislators struggle so hard with this issue. For example, by trying to reorganize the data protection framework in Europe. This is a very long story. It started in 2012. So that's more than 3 years ago. And 3 normal years in the internet mean probably something like 25 years. So 25 years ago, the European Commission had the idea to come up with a new framework for the data protection regulation. And something very remarkable happened then. The parliament started to debate on this, and there was a young German politician called Jan Philipp Albrecht who started to rewrite this, and he made 350 amendments just as a rapporteur. And the story didn't end then. Other members of the parliament added 3,133 amendments. So one piece of legislation, data protection regulation, 3,133 amendments. Who wants to read this? Just Thomas and me, I assume, nobody else. And the outcome of this, no wonder, is that the council is still working on this. I will skip everything here. And we are still not debating the important matters of principle, which is control and ownership, and not only in data protection, as the European Commission now finally rightly puts it, but also when it comes to intellectual property. This is the website of the European Commission at the moment, setting priorities. Priority 2 is the digital single market. And within this digital single market, there are 2 priorities. Priority 1, which is data protection, and priority 3, which is rewriting the copyright framework. And my argument now would be we need to bring those 2 debates much more together than we do at the moment. Okay, I will skip all this, and I will come back to the last 2 or 3 slides on how to survive a presentation like this one here by, again, saying we should probably go back to the status quo, which is we do not have yet consistent principles on how to control data in the 21st century. And rule 5 would be, as I said before, better let Thomas Hearn speak instead of me, which I did when I prepared that talk. So I did a Google search for Thomas Hearn and quotes, right? So what can I find when I look for quotes for Thomas Hearn? And this is what I see when I do that search on Google. I see interesting people. So this is more for the Germans now, like this person here, Thomas Gottschalk. And I see somebody here down here, and this is the important part now. This is Spock. And what he says here, and Thomas Hearn is in a way associated with this, is change is the essential process of all existence. Thank you for listening, and I'm very much looking forward to your questions.